I tried to pull off the Canadian tuxedo, and my wife Jen was like, "Don't, just
Well,
don't."
when I saw you at New York Music Month, I was like, "Oh, hello, stealing my look." I think
Yeah.
it's a I feel like you should probably just, like, go with it. You have to, like,
Yeah.
get like, a light denim and a darker denim, like, don't try and match the denims, it has to be, like, a little contrast.
Okay. I do consider myself an honorary Canadian.
Why?
So I, because for years I had a place on the Canadian-Vermont border,
Right,
and my wife is from the Canadian-Vermont-Quebec border, and I love Rush,
right.
and I love Montreal. So I feel like living within 10 miles of the Canadian border makes me an honorary Canadian. Also, my wife has, like, aunts and uncles who, like, don't speak English because
That's, like
they're, like, Quebecois,
yeah.
like, hardcore, and my father-in-law's Yves from his family's from Quebec, so I feel like I'm an honorary Canadian.
Yeah, no,
Actually, I just found out that my 2 girls and my wife can become Canadian citizens.
do it,
So,
and then you
yeah.
can apply for it, 'cause, like, it's not going great here at the moment. Doesn't feel like don't
You
feel
know
safe.
what's going great, though? The
Mm,
music industry is going great.
is it? Is it?
Everyone's employed that wants to be employed. Artists are happy with how they're getting compensated. There's a real path to success for everyone who's ambitious about the arts.
Is
It's
this,
great.
like, under the Trump administration?
I guess there's nothing to talk about. We solved it.
We did. Hold on, my dog is chewing on the table. This sounds like, not real.
Yeah.
So, yeah, or we don't have a podcast after that.
Yeah, I know, that wouldn't be fun. So, here's what I wanna talk about today, and this is something that I wrote for a Substack called Leveling Up. I write for the Substack a couple times a year, and it's got a good audience, so it's fun to write for them. But I wanna talk about, we need a new royalty for AI,
Yes. Yes.
and I wasn't even sure I believed it when I wrote the piece, but now I think I might be right. And we're gonna go through that. We're gonna go through it now. So, I think the thing to remember is that every time new technology invents a way to consume, listen, purchase, stream music
Mhm,
that is new, that doesn't quite map to earlier eras,
mhm,
the industry and governments invent a new royalty.
mhm, they have
So
to.
there's a precedent for this. So, up until the Civil War era, there was no copyright at all. Like, people could just steal music. You could write a piece of music, someone could steal it and print cheap music and make a fortune, and you had no recourse, and that was just kind of accepted. Our national anthem, everyone's watching the World Cup. Like, our national anthem, the lyrics are written in the 18 teens, but the tune is an old British drinking song from the 1700s.
And they just took it and they didn't know them anything.
Yeah, and the reason why he used that old British drinking tune is because everybody in the country already knew it.
Yep. Right.
So when you print lyrics in a newspaper, then to the tune of whatever this British drinking song was, then people go like, "All right, I can sing it." And it was like there was no copyright recourse. It's also funny that our national anthem is a British
I know.
song.
British
Writ
drinking song.
Yeah, he's like, written during the War of 1812 against Britain,
Right.
but right.
They're like, "Cheers."
So, but then we started to have copyright, and the first major copyright, really, I mean, there was like laws that were kind of trickling in, but it was when piano rolls and sheet music
Mhm,
started to become popular. And these speakeasies and these bars in the 19 teens, were like getting rich off patrons coming to listen to music, and the songwriters weren't getting a cut. And they're like, I want some of this bar tab.
yeah.
So, so we invented the mechanical right, and that was the first at scale musical royalty in America, which is mechanical is when things are reproduced. So when you reproduce sheet music or you reproduce a piano roll, then the songwriter would get paid.
A portion of that. Yep.
And we still have the mechanical royalty today. We talked about it on the last podcast. Spotify still has to pay mechanical royalties, even though the idea of a reproduction in streaming is quite weird
Like,
and not.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, you would never invent a system this way today, but it's still there.
Like, streaming is a reproduction over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's like software reproduction, I guess. Like, can you imagine in 1909 when the US copyright law was signed in, like, can you imagine, like, no one had an idea what software was.
We would if we were to tell them where we're at now, they would be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it is so far from. Yeah, totally.
So so then and then we had and then this is the day when there was no such thing as recorded music either. So now we have recorded music, and it was very popular up until the 1950s and 60s for the person to write the song not be the person who recorded the song. And that's what an A&R person was. The A&R stands for artist and repertoire because in those early days of recording music, you were marrying an artist with the music, with the repertoire. So we invented a public performance royalty, which is also a publishing royalty, but if you reproduce the recording, that's one thing. If you play it at a candy shop or at a sports stadium, then
You gotta get
that was a
paid.
separate rule. You got the songwriters like, yo, everyone's coming to the baseball game. Everyone's going to the baseball match to see William Howard Taft throw out the first pitch. Like, champ,
I
champ.
think he would be the one throwing out the first pitch, by the way. Wasn't he
He,
like the 7th inning stretch guy because he
yeah,
was a little big?
yeah, yeah. So songwriters again were like, I want to get paid. Like, oh, you're Johnny's taking Sally to the soda fountain for a date. Like they're playing the latest Benny
Jukebox.
Goodman hit. Like Benny Goodman's like, I want to get paid. So they invented another royalty, something that didn't exist. And the reason why they needed a new royalty is because there was this technology, recording and broadcasting music separate from the.
Jukeboxes. I know this is very, like, so old school jukeboxes in diners. Were you just buying that one record and the machine, and that's it, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
you'd
would
put in like a penny or
play
a nickel.
right, the play, but was that money from the play paid back, or was that something that the diner owned?
Oh,
You pay 25 cents to play a song on the jukebox.
yeah.
Like, did they have to.
It still works the way it does now. Their ASCAP and BMI would go around and audit these places, these soda fountains, and make sure that they were reporting what was played in the jukebox, and
Wow,
then paying a lump sum to ASCAP and BMI, and then they would pay it out to their artists.
nice, yeah.
So there was a public performance royalty that was paid from the soda fountain. I love how that's our proxy for anything in the 1940s.
Soda fountain, right.
At the wall barracks.
Let's have, like, transatlantic talk for all of
Yeah.
this.
So that was it, and then I mean, and then obviously then we had a master royalty built in, and there actually wasn't a federal master royalty in the 1970s, but starting in the 1930s and 40s, as I said, the artist that was recording the music was often, almost always, different than the person writing it. There was virtually no exceptions until the 1950s and 60s with really the Beatles and even Elvis didn't write his own music. So we had another royalty, and we had to make that because now there was no such thing as a master. That just didn't exist. There was no master royalty in the 1800s or early 1900s because there was no such thing as a master. So again, a new technology invented a new way for people to consume and purchase music. So we got to figure out a way to compensate the rights holders. And we even had an earlier new precedent. In 2002, we invented a new royalty. And it was actually memorialized in a law in Congress in 1995, but it didn't really take into effect until Sound Exchange was formed. And that was like digital radio royalty,
Right.
which is a separate royalty. And in the 1930s and 40s, record labels made these deals with radio saying you can play our music for free, but we just want to have access to your audience, and we want to be able to control what you play. And we'll just clean up on music sales on the back end. Really dumb, short-sighted deal.
Super dumb. It's like a
Yeah.
marketing tool, kind of.
And I mean, for a while it worked. And then even in the MTV era, they kept that up. They like MTV didn't buy videos. There was no royalty from
They're just playing,
broadcast
right?
or cable. There's no royalty from broadcast or cable sent back to the rights holders of the artists for playing videos. Isn't that
And they would play
crazy?
some of them, like, over the popular ones on top, like, top of the hour every hour.
Yeah, like
That is crazy.
how many millions of plays and how many billions of eyeballs did Madonna have in the 1980s on MTV?
Or did Thriller.
Yeah, or
Like,
throw like so Columbia, Sony, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones didn't see a dime from any of that.
and
Isn't
they
that
spent
crazy?
back in the day, they spent so much money on those music videos too.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
these were
wild.
like six-figure, even up into seven-figure budgets.
Yeah.
So that was just the labels being idiots, what a shock. So, but when digital radio came along, when Sirius XM, cable radio, Music Choice, Pandora, the rights holders, the labels had started to really, like, decline, and they weren't gonna make that same mistake. They invented a new so every time there's a digital stream on radio, not on-demand streaming, but a digital radio, then Sound Exchange collects a master royalty,
Mm. Mhm.
and that's new. So that we have all these precedents for this, and we have neighboring rights, which is terrestrial radio and digital radio over the ex-US, and we have the mechanical and the public performance on the publishing side. We have the master on the recorded music side, and we have the digital public performance, which is Sound Exchange royalties. So now we have AI. We're trying to shoehorn training data and outputs and attribution into what we have. The 11 Labs Merlin deal and Cobalt
Mm.
deal is like, we're going to just take this pool of money and we're going to like pay it out based on what streaming does. We're not going to actually take into account any of the value in the AI.
Mhm.
So, do you think we need a new royalty? Are we trying to shoehorn what was made for an earlier era to
Yeah.
AI and it doesn't map?
Yes. I mean, for everything you just said and for the Substack that you will then tell us about what you thought was wrong, but what is wrong, this to me feels like a very I mean, like, more drastic tech than we've seen in the past. Those all have felt like a natural progression with the digital age coming in and being able to reach a larger audience with music. This is, like, more disruptive than playing songs on MTV or on a radio, or even, digital radio. This is transformative, this is disruptive, and I 100%, yeah, think that we need a new royalty system.
Definitely transformative. I came up with what I call the generative usage royalty, and it would be a master and a publishing royalty because for AI training data, you do need both. You need both copyrights in order to make an output out of training data. And I'm on the fence. Like starting a new royalty is hard. I mean, the industry's got to get together and the industry's got to agree on something.
Yes, and that is difficult in itself. Exactly.
And we get a new copyright bill in Congress once every 25 years. Congress is too busy. This comes out of the Judiciary Committee. So you're dealing with Supreme Court nominations and you're dealing with judges and other legal government issues. Nobody gives a shit about music. It's like small potatoes. So every 25 years, when it's like glaringly obvious, we get a new omnibus copyright bill. We got one in the DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, was in the late 90s. And then we got the Music Modernization Act in 2018. And they help and they create new royalties and this is where you would do it, but they also leave things behind. Like we didn't address streaming at all in the DMCA, even though streaming was right around the corner. We didn't address AI at all in the Music Modernization Act, even though 2018 AI was around the corner. So we need a new one. And I'm on the fence because like using a streaming proxy to pay out rights holders, like that's a real measurable industry approved way to value music. So maybe it's just easier to stick to that.
I guess, is this an opportunity to make a rate that's more favorable to artists, or do you think that's not even, like, on the table? Because yes, of course, it's agreed upon rate for streaming, but for the majority of artists, it's not really lucrative.
Yeah, and it'll probably, like we do with black box royalties, like we do with a lot in the music, it probably unfairly supports the people already at the top.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we know it.
Yeah, we know it does, and especially now with, like, ASCAP and BMI collecting all the money they collect. So much of it they can't trace back to particular songwriter, and it's because that songwriter is probably small and not really
Didn't know how to set himself up, right.
yeah, I didn't know, and then at the end of the day, like, Adele just gets it because they have to pay out by law. They can't hold on to this money forever. So, yeah, there's probably, an example of using a streaming proxy just kind of reinforcing the biases and the top-down approach.
Mhm.
Oh, but the other problem is that, like, we would have to agree on how to pay this out. Like, do masters and publishing split it equally, 50-50?
They don't, which they don't for streaming, right?
They don't for streaming. And the 11 Labs Merlin deal, they do, which is
Right.
interesting. Sync,
Right,
they
yes.
do, but do we and then we'd have to agree on how to value this stuff within the training model process. Like,
We talked about this a few months ago, I think, but, like, that sync approach for this new royalty idea was interesting, the 50/50.
yeah. That's what, like, I don't know how the publishing community got that.
I mean, good for them, first of
Yeah.
all.
The way that Cobalt and the way that Merlin are splitting the 11 Labs deal 50-50. I've read some justification for it that's like, well, the songwriting part of the song and the master part of the song, they are tokenized equally in the model, and they're equal in how the model makes something, which, yeah, I get it. Like, that makes sense. But, like, that's not how streaming works, and then you need the song written underlying composition to make the streaming. It's the reason why streaming pays way more than the masters. The labels are the one fronting all the money.
Exactly.
They're not so the fact that, like, we're ignoring that and stream and AI training data is interesting. But
I guess you it's, like correct, and I guess it's like an iteration of streaming so that we've already recognized that for streaming purposes, but for this that's why I said it's, like, sort of transformative. If you're taking that already existing track that's being monetized in that first level in the favor of the master rights holder, and then using it for this purpose, why not 50/50? Like for sync, of course,
yeah. Yeah,
you know,
yeah, there yeah.
same thing, like, and it's always 50 it's almost always 50/50.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a sync deal that
Same.
hasn't been 50-50. So, I'm sure they exist, but they that's a good point, and I think that's probably why the songwriters were successful in getting the 50-50 split, but we all the things that we would have to agree on. Number 1, how do you value training data? Like, the
Mhm.
initial back propagation process of training a model is one thing. A user puts in a prompt and the output is iterated and refined from the model is another thing. Like, those are 2 different ways the data is used, and they're valued in different ways. Data is way more valuable in the second part of this because the user is making a prompt. Like, I want an R&B TLC jam from the 90s. Like, TLC should be weighted way more heavily in that process at the end than they are in the beginning when they're just part of, like, a trillion tokens.
Well, I feel
So
like for the attribution piece, though, isn't that what they would be taking the prompts a lot of, like, the prompts that are specific to artists, not like, "I want a '90s style R&B," like, if you're calling out TLC or you're calling out Salt and Peppa, whomever, like, it does a few things. It kind of attributes to what exactly that the style you're looking for. It also gives us data on, like, what people are actually interested in creating and what needs to be focused on in terms of training data, and those are the 2 things I could think of, but I think it's really important, obviously, to look at those prompts.
yeah, and then so you should weight those more. So, if there's a royalty pool for AI training data and someone actually prompts a specific artist, then we need to agree on how to value that
Or,
versus
like, what
we
percentage that, like yeah, what does that weigh exactly?
yeah, it's a political issue as much as it's a technical issue. Like, I think people feel like, especially if these models are willing to open up their hoods a little bit and let rights holders audit them, I think we can probably come to a situation where we can reasonably attribute what music is used and where in the model, but then we have to agree how to, like, weight it all and assign a value to it.
But again, it favors, like, when we talked about streaming too, the economics always favor those artists that are streaming in the millions and billions. Same thing. Nobody's gonna put a small artist name that they or very rarely, I guess, maybe like a super but most of the time, you're going to associate, like, a Michael Jackson or a TLC or, Madonna. These are going to be, for the most part, the artists that continue to remain on the top.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think you're right. As much as we talk about AI and even we talked about streaming being the ultimate democratizer, in a lot of ways it was. The access to fans through not through gatekeepers is real, but
Mhm.
we are still propagating the top at the top. And you can imagine these deals that are being done between Suno and Udio and the majors, they're gonna they're the first ones at the table.
That's true.
So
So it's what people want. It's there's an entire conversation on, like, this is very mainstream mass, and then I think we should do a whole 'nother podcast on, like, what's what's good for the indie community? What's good for a growing indie community? Like, how where are we? How do we help? Also keeping in mind that this is gonna happen, and they are going to be deprioritized as usual, and, what does that mean?
I
Yeah,
love
I
that
think
idea.
yeah, I think focusing because our indie podcast did really well, and I think people are really into understanding that community. So, let's see how that goes, but I do think we could dive deeper
We gotta
in.
explain what that means. We gotta explain what that is. So Lauren had this genius idea that we need new labels and monikers for different types of music. So we have independent music, which might be the Orchard, right? Owned by a major,
Sony
but still owned by Sony, but still like not a signed to a frontline label. And then you have what else?
for, like, really independent?
Yeah.
All the distribution other distribution secretly to, Symphonic, United Masters, those are, like, indie. Like,
What do
they're
you
like
call it?
what?
And you gotta go indie.
I'm trying indie.
Yeah, you have major, you have, independent, you have indie. And that's
Like, are you going through, like, ADA or, like, CD Baby or The Orchard, or are you like, secretly? Like,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a difference in
Wait,
these.
I I thought indie was like CD Baby or
No, I feel
DistroKid.
like because CD Baby is now Downtown, which is now
Right.
Virgin,
Yeah,
which
or
is now
yeah,
Universal, so
yeah.
they lost their legs in the
Yeah,
in
they lost
they
their
got
accent.
independent. Now they're
Yeah.
independent. But I no, there's listen, the indie community I think is so interesting, and, even larger artists are, like, really taking to going to distributors and kinda doing their own thing, so that's a whole 'nother podcast, and I do think that we should have maybe a special guest on to talk about that from their perspective, but everything that we talk about as it pertains to a new royalty rate or a new tech is always gonna be focused on those larger artists because
Yeah,
that's what's fuel the engine's fueled by the top 3%.
yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we'll see if generative usage royalty ever becomes a thing. I will link the Substack in the show notes if
Yes.
anyone's interested. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell all your friends,
Yeah.
and we'll see you next time.